Great new inventions are created every day. Today's top headline is the parachute, thanks to Stefan Benjik. He fell upon this idea after witnessing a fatal plane crash. The parachute's purpose is to capture air and create resistance, slowing down the force of gravity. Stefan believed by doing this he was helping pilots trapped in broken planes. So he put his invention to the test. And indeed, it worked. Now we use this new invention in World War I for pilots trapped in broken airplanes. I believe this to be a new start of a revolution in new pilot safety. In other headlines today, not too long ago, the unsinkable ship took its first and last trip overseas. The Titanic sank approximately 2 hours after hitting an iceberg. The ship was completely submerged under the Atlantic Ocean, where now it will lie forever. But now today they say this event led to the need of a device that will detect things underwater. A new and improved hydrophone is now being created. They say this hydrophone not only will receive but also transmit man-made signals underwater by using sound waves, bouncing from one object to another and then back, recording the time it takes to return to the original object. If this invention is a success, this could affect the way of sailing and navigation forever. Now going to the average everyday home. Is your toast always burnt or not crunchy enough? Well, thanks to Charles, a new pop-up toaster has been invented. They say toast is a very complex thing to make. It needs to be heated at high temperatures for a short amount of time. Charles came up with the idea of heating a piece of bread on both sides using metal strips. He installed a timer with springs inside of a toaster so when the toast was at perfection, it would pop up. Garrett Morgan is a hero, saving 2 workers trapped in a fire under the Lake Erie. How did you do it, he asked. He used what Morgan calls a safety hood. Before the fire, Morgan took interest in finding a way to breathe cooler and cleaner air in event of a fire. Morgan discovered this type of air was at the lowest part of the ground. He created the safety hood with 2 hoses, one reaching all the way to the ground collecting fresh air and the other one for exhaling. The mask also had a transparent eyepiece that were heat resistant. Morgan believed this would give the firefighters an extra 15 minutes in case of a fire. Morgan's invention never got put to the test until today, and it was a success. Morgan is now a hero. Fire companies everywhere now want to use Morgan's safety hood.
In the 1910s, involvement in sports increased drastically. 3 main sporting events took place. Boxing, which rapidly grew to a rise of fame and fortune, college football, which led up to the major sport known today as professional football or the NFL, and baseball, which is an all-American sport. In 1914, the Chicago Wrigley Field was built for the Chicago Cubs, and in 1916, the Chicago Cubs had their first game. The Chicago Cubs played Cincinnati Reds and defeated them 7-6 in 11 innings. The Cincinnati Reds did not lose for long, though. 3 years later, they were in the World Series up against the Chicago White Sox. A huge controversy came up in the 1919 World Series with the Chicago White Sox and the Cincinnati Reds, which is known today as the Black Sox scandal. 8 of the Chicago White Sox players were accused of losing games intentionally in the exchange for money from gamblers. Yes, the White Sox lost the World Series to the Cincinnati Reds. The White Sox players who partook in this controversy and one who did not partake in this controversy all had a meeting prior to the games about the conspiracy that was going to happen. All 8 players were tried in court, and all 8 players were banned from life from playing the baseball. Now, not all the players partook in the scandal, such as third baseman Buck Weaver. Buck Weaver refused to participate and did not receive any money, but he was still banned because he knew what was going on and knew what his teammates were doing. Buck Weaver did not take any money from any gamblers, but they decided to ban him because he didn't say anything to anybody. Buck Weaver actually tried his hardest and wanted his team to win.
When immigrants were minorities in the 1910s? Women and immigrants had to work in sweatshops, worked for low wages, and worked for long hours. A tragic event that involved minorities was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire.
I learned a new sound. A more horrible sound than description can picture. It was the thud of speeding, living bodies on a stone sidewalk. Thud dead. Thud dead. Thud dead.
On March 25th, 1911, fire broke out on the 8th floor of New York City's Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Within minutes, the top 3 floors were ablaze. Workers on the 8th and 10th floors narrowly escaped.
In between was the 9th floor. This was the main sewing plant of the Triangle Factory. About 250 workers, teenagers and people in their early 20s were just finishing work. 4:45, the quitting bell rang, and they saw the flames outside their window. There was no warning before that. There was panic. Some of the workers went to the fire escape in the back of the building. It tore away from the rear wall of the building and dumped about 24 workers to their death in the air shaft. There were 2 doors out of the factory, and one of them was locked. For the last 100 or so workers, the only choice was to die in the flames or to jump out the windows. Now, March 25th, 1911 was a Saturday. Thousands of people were out enjoying the day, and they heard the commotion. They saw the smoke rising over the building, and they ran to see what was happening. So literally thousands of people watched helplessly as the workers above them made this terrible decision. They watched as 54 workers jumped or fell to their deaths from the windows of the Triangle Shirtwaist Company. This was the worst workplace disaster in New York City before September 11th, 2001. 146 workers were killed, 123 of them women and girls. 2 of the victims were just 14 years old.
Women had to work since their husbands earned low wages too and could not live off just that money, and since they went to war. During the 1910s, 23.4% of women were in the workforce. Women had to step into jobs left behind by men who went to war. These jobs included truck drivers, automotive mechanics, and police officers. Women were then forced from these jobs when the men came back. Jeannette Rankin was elected in 1916 to serve in Congress. She was the first woman elected to serve. This was a turning point for women, and things were getting better for them. Immigrants had to live in small apartments with multiple families to be able to afford rent. Even though rent was not that much, they couldn't afford it by themselves.